What if the person who once ignored you suddenly stood in front of you in need? Today, Ibrahim Traoré meets the teacher who never believed in him, and what happens next will leave you speechless. But before we begin, tell us in the comments, from which country are you watching our video? It was a bright morning when President Ibrahim Traoré visited an old school in his hometown. The children were singing, the chalkboards were full of lessons, and the classrooms smelled of fresh dust and old books. The students were excited. Their president had come to encourage them, to remind them that every child, no matter how small, carries a dream that can grow into greatness. As Ibrahim walked through the hallways, shaking hands with teachers and smiling at students, his eyes suddenly stopped. In one small classroom, he saw an elderly woman standing near the board, dusting her hands after writing a lesson. Her voice was weak, her clothes simple, and her back slightly bent with age. Ibrahim's heart skipped a beat. He recognized her. Instantly, it was Madam Asma, the teacher who once taught him as a child. Ibrahim walked slowly into the small classroom. The children's voices echoed as they repeated lessons from the blackboard. The chalk squeaked faintly as the teacher wrote the last words of the day's topic. His eyes froze. Standing at the board was an older woman with a frail frame, her shoulders slightly bent, her hands rough and tired from years of writing on chalkboards. Her simple clothes were faded, her sandals worn thin, yet her presence commanded respect among the children. For a moment, Ibrahim's heart pounded. Memories rushed back like a flood. He saw himself as a small boy again, sitting in the very last row, hand raised high, waiting desperately to be noticed. But the voice that once filled this room, the same woman's voice who had rarely called his name. Ibrahim took a deep breath, then stepped closer. "Madam Asma." The teacher turned, startled. She blinked as her eyes fell upon the tall, confident man in military uniform standing before her. For a moment she only saw the president of the nation. But then, recognition struck her like lightning. Her lips trembled, her hand went to her mouth. She whispered in disbelief, "No, this cannot be. You are Ibrahim? The boy from the back row?" "Yes, madam. That boy, who once sat quietly, waiting for you to notice him." The class fell silent. The students stopped reading, their curious eyes darting from their teacher to the president. A heavy tension filled the room. Asma's face grew pale. She stepped back, gripping the edge of the desk to steady herself. Her eyes filled with tears that she struggled to hold back. I cannot believe this. You? President Ibrahim Traoré, my student? I never imagined. Her voice broke. She lowered her gaze, her shame visible in every gesture. I was not kind to you, Ibrahim. I never encouraged you. I did not see your worth. I favored other students, the ones who were louder, quicker, brighter in my eyes. And you were left behind. Forgive me. Ibrahim's expression softened. He stepped closer until he stood right in front of her. The silence in the classroom grew heavy, almost sacred. Yes. Madam, I remember those days. I remember raising my hand and waiting for you to call on me, but you never did. I remember when you praised the others, while I sat quietly, trying harder every day. At times, I even thought I was invisible. A tear slipped down Asma's cheek. Her hands trembled as she held them together. I was wrong, Ibrahim. I was blind to your potential. I did not give you the encouragement you deserved. I failed you as a teacher. Ibrahim paused, letting her words hang in the air. He looked at her, not with anger but with compassion. Madam Asma, you did not fail me. You tested me. Life itself tested me. And today I stand before you, not as a child seeking approval, but as a man who believes in forgiveness. The students gasped softly. Some whispered among themselves, amazed at the unfolding scene. Teacher Asma covered her face with her hands, overcome by emotion. Never in her life did she imagine that the boy she once overlooked would return, not in anger, but in kindness. The classroom was silent. The children sat frozen, their books open, but forgotten. All eyes were locked on the president and the trembling old teacher. Ibrahim stood tall but calm, his hands gently folded in front of him. He could see the weight of shame pressing on Madame Asma's shoulders. The woman who once seemed so powerful, in his childhood now looked fragile, small, almost broken. Ibrahim, I don't know how to face you. When you were my student, I did not see your light. I was unfair. I pushed you aside while praising others. I thought you would never achieve much. And now, look at you. You are the leader of this nation. Her lips trembled as she spoke, her words spilling out like a confession she had carried for years. I gave my heart to the children I thought would succeed. I never once thought you would rise. I did not encourage you, Ibrahim. I gave you nothing but silence. The classroom air grew heavy, as if everyone inside was holding their breath. Ibrahim took a deep step forward. His eyes were not filled with anger, but with something much greater, compassion. Yes, madam, you gave me silence. And that silence taught me to speak louder than anyone. You gave me doubt, and that doubt taught me to believe in myself. You turned away from me, and that made me strong enough to walk alone. The children gasped softly at his words. A few clapped their hands over their mouths. They had never seen their president so open, so vulnerable. Asma lowered her head, ashamed. She wiped her tears with the corner of her scarf, her voice shaking. Asma, Ibrahim, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I was hard on you. Too hard. Life was hard on me too, and I let my struggles turn me into a bitter woman. I regret it, deeply. For years I regretted the way I treated you, and now, standing before you, I feel only shame. For a moment, silence again. Ibrahim's eyes softened. He walked even closer until he stood just a step away from her. Slowly, he reached out his hand and touched hers. Madame Asma, I did not come here today to remind you of the pain. I came here to thank you, because even though you did not believe in me, you still taught me lessons. And those lessons, whether through kindness or through neglect, shaped me into who I am today. Asma broke down, covering her face with her hands. The sound of her quiet sobbing filled the room. The children looked at each other with wide eyes, some whispering softly, realizing they were witnessing history. Ibrahim leaned slightly, his voice warm but powerful. Ibrahim, do not cry, madam. The past is gone. What matters now is that you are still my teacher. And a teacher, no matter her mistakes, will always deserve respect. The students erupted into soft applause. A few stood, clapping with admiration. The classroom, once tense, now filled with the sound of hope. Asma slowly lowered her hands from her face. Her eyes were red, her cheeks wet. But for the first time, that day, a small smile broke through her tears. You are a better man than I could have ever imagined, Ibrahim. I did not love you then, but today I am proud of you. Ibrahim smiled, nodding gently. Ibrahim, and I am proud to still call you my teacher. The moment became a symbol, not of bitterness but of forgiveness. The classroom was still filled with silence after Ibrahim's words of forgiveness. Madame Asma lowered herself onto an old wooden chair, her body trembling as though the weight of her memories had finally become too heavy to carry. The children leaned forward in their seats. Even they could sense that something important was about to be revealed. Ibrahim remained standing, his eyes steady on her, giving her the respect and space to speak. Ibrahim, I must tell you the truth. You deserve to know why I was the way I was, why I never showed you kindness. She wiped her tears with the edge of her scarf, her voice trembling as she began to speak. When you were my student, my life was falling apart. My husband had left me with 2 children to feed. I worked here at the school during the day, and at night I washed clothes in other people's homes just to bring food to the table. There were days when I went to bed hungry, days when I taught lessons on an empty stomach. Her voice cracked. She pressed a hand to her chest as though the memories were suffocating her. I was bitter, Ibrahim. I was angry at the world. Instead of lifting every child, I gave my energy only to those I thought could succeed quickly. I thought, if one of my students became great, maybe it would bring me honor. Maybe it would ease my pain. But in doing so, I ignored the quiet ones, children like you. I hurt the very ones who needed me the most. The room grew heavier with each word. Some of the children's eyes shone with tears. They could feel the sorrow in her story. I remember you, Ibrahim. You were quiet, always waiting, always patient. But I overlooked you just as the world overlooked me. I see now that I was wrong. So wrong. For years I carried this guilt in my heart, wondering what became of the boy I never encouraged. She paused, covering her face briefly with her hand before continuing. Life did not get easier. My children grew up, but poverty never left me. I grew older, weaker, still teaching, still struggling. Many times I thought of leaving this profession. But where would I go? Who would care for an old woman with nothing? So I stayed here, clinging to my chalk and blackboard, while the world moved on without me. Her eyes filled with tears once again, but this time she forced herself to meet Ibrahim's gaze. Ibrahim, when I saw you walk into this classroom today, I thought my heart would stop. The boy I once ignored is now the leader of the nation. You don't know how many nights I lay awake regretting the way I treated you. And now, standing before you, all I can say is, I am sorry. I failed you. I failed my duty as a teacher. Her hands trembled as she placed them over her knees. The weight of her confession was so heavy that even the children felt it. No one moved. No one spoke. Ibrahim stepped closer, his tall figure casting a shadow beside her. He did not interrupt. He did not scold. He simply listened, with the patience of a man who understood that behind every harsh act, there is often hidden pain. He finally spoke, his voice calm but filled with strength. Madam Asma, you did not fail me. You were broken. But you still stood in front of this classroom. You gave knowledge even when you had nothing left to give. Yes, you were hard. Yes, you overlooked me. But your lessons, even your silence, became part of my journey. And today I do not see a failure in you. I see a woman who fought battles that no one else could see. Asma broke into sobs, her body shaking. For the first time, the guilt she had carried for decades began to lighten. The children clapped softly as if to comfort their teacher. Some whispered to each other, realizing they had just learned a powerful lesson. Even teachers are human, carrying unseen wounds. The room was still heavy with Madame Asma's confession. Her tears had wet the edge of her scarf, her shoulders trembling with every breath. The children sat frozen, their notebooks untouched, their young hearts quietly learning a lesson far greater than any written on the chalkboard. Ibrahim remained silent for a moment. His eyes softened as he looked at her, not with the anger of a boy who once felt invisible, but with the calm strength of a man who understood what it meant to carry pain and rise above it. He stepped forward slowly, until he stood just beside her. His large hand reached down and gently held her trembling hands. Madam Asma, life tested you. Poverty tested you. Hardship tested you. And maybe in your pain, you failed to see the children who needed you most. Yes, you hurt me. Yes, I felt forgotten in your class. But today I stand here not to remind you of the past, but to show you what true strength means. The children leaned in closer. The silence in the room was sacred, broken only by the faint sound of Asma's sobbing. A leader is not made by revenge. A leader is made by responsibility. I cannot erase the days when I felt invisible in this room, but I can choose what to do with this moment, right here, right now. And I choose forgiveness. The words echoed in the classroom like thunder. The students gasped softly. Some clapped their hands over their mouths, unable to believe the kindness in his voice. Madame Asma's tears flowed faster. She tried to pull her hands away, but Ibrahim held them gently, firmly, as if telling her that her shame could no longer run from his compassion. Ibrahim, how can you forgive me so easily? I did not believe in you. I gave you nothing. Yet, here you stand, giving me honor I never gave you. Ibrahim bent slightly, his face calm, his eyes steady. Because forgiveness is the weapon of the strong. Because if I carry revenge in my heart, I am no different than the pain that once hurt me. But if I carry mercy, I rise above it. And that is what leadership demands. The children suddenly broke into applause, their small hands filling the room with a rhythm of hope. Some shouted, "Long live the President!" while others cried without knowing why, moved by the weight of what they were witnessing. Madame Asma lowered her head, unable to stop crying. But this time her tears were not only of shame, they were also of relief. For years, she had carried the burden of regret, and in this single moment, her former student had lifted it off her shoulders. Ibrahim turned to the class, raising his voice so every child could hear. Children, remember this. The world will not always believe in you. Some will ignore you. Some will doubt you. But if you keep faith, if you keep working hard, one day you will rise. And when that day comes, do not use your power for revenge. Use it to heal. Use it to build. That is how true greatness is born. The applause grew, louder. Some of the children even stood on their benches, clapping with all their strength. Their young faces glowed with inspiration. Madame Asma looked up at him, her eyes red but shining with a faint smile. You are a greater man than I ever imagined, Ibrahim. I did not give you love back then. But today you have given me more love than I deserve. Ibrahim smiled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. And today, you are still my teacher. The moment became timeless. A boy once ignored had now returned as a leader, not to punish but to forgive. The sound of applause slowly faded. The classroom was filled with hope, but Ibrahim knew that words alone were not enough. A leader must act. He turned toward the students, his voice strong and steady. Children, today you are witnessing something important. You see before you my teacher, Madame Asma. Years ago, I sat in these very chairs, just like you. I was a boy with dreams. But not everyone believed in me, and yet here I stand, not because I was loved by all, but because I refused to give up. And now look at her, a woman who has spent her life teaching, shaping minds, and building this nation in silence. But what has she received in return? Poverty, struggle, a broken life. Is this how we should treat our teachers? The children murmured, shaking their heads. Some shouted softly, "No, sir." Ibrahim's voice grew louder, carrying the weight of justice. No, this is not justice. This is not how a society should honor those who built it. If a teacher who gave her life to education lives in hardship, then we as a nation have failed. And as your leader, I will not allow this failure to continue. The students clapped again, their small voices echoing in agreement. Teachers standing at the doorway nodded, tears welling in their eyes. Ibrahim turned back to Madame Asma, his face full of compassion. From today, Madame Asma, you will not live in poverty again. I will ensure you receive a proper home where you can live with dignity. I will see that you have medical care, financial support, and comfort in your remaining years. You will no longer stand in front of a chalkboard with an empty stomach. You will no longer walk home worried about how to eat tomorrow. You gave knowledge to this nation, and this nation through me will now give back to you. Asma gasped, covering her mouth with her trembling hand. Tears streamed down her cheeks uncontrollably. She shook her head as though unable to believe his words. Ibrahim, I don't deserve this. After the way I treated you, how can you give me so much kindness? Ibrahim stepped closer, his voice deep with conviction, because the work of a leader is not to punish those who doubted him, but to lift them up. Because a true leader does not think only of himself, but of every citizen, even those who once caused him pain. Madam, you are not my enemy. You are a part of my story. And today, you are a part of my responsibility. The children rose from their benches, clapping loudly. Some shouted, "Long live the President!" Others cried, touched by the sight of their leader showing humility and grace. Teachers and staff who had gathered outside the room wiped their eyes. They had seen leaders before, but rarely had they seen one with such a heart. Asma broke down, completely, sobbing into her scarf. For decades, she had carried regret, shame, and poverty, and in a single moment, her former student had turned her tears of guilt into tears of hope. Ibrahim gently placed his hand on her shoulder, steady and firm. Remember this moment, children. Remember that greatness is not about power. Greatness is not about revenge. Greatness is about service. One day, each of you may rise in your own way. And when you do, never forget the people around you. Never forget your teachers, your parents, your community. A nation can only rise when its people rise together. The applause thundered now, shaking the small classroom. The children's voices merged into a chorus of admiration. And there stood Ibrahim Traoré, not just as a president, not just as a leader, but as a living example of forgiveness, compassion, and responsibility. The classroom slowly quieted down. The applause faded, but the emotions lingered heavy in the air. Madame Asma still wept softly, her heart lighter than it had been in decades. Ibrahim looked at her one last time before turning to face the children and the teachers who had gathered. His voice grew calm, steady, and filled with wisdom. Children, today you have seen something that is greater than any lesson written in your books. You have seen forgiveness. You have seen compassion. When I was a boy, I dreamed of being recognized, but I was overlooked. Today, I returned not to take revenge, but to show that a leader's heart must be bigger than his pain. Remember this: life is not about holding on to the wounds of the past. It is about healing, growing, and lifting others with you. If we carry bitterness, we remain chained. But if we carry forgiveness, we remain free. The students listened, wide-eyed, their young minds absorbing each word. The teachers nodded, silently agreeing with every sentence. Ibrahim paused, his eyes scanning the classroom. Then, with a firm but kind tone, he delivered the final words. Greatness is not measured by how much you rise above others, but by how many people you bring with you as you rise. Never forget your roots, never forget your teachers, and never forget the people who helped shape your path, even if their hands were not always gentle. The room was filled with silence again, not of fear, but of respect. Madame Asma, still overwhelmed, whispered through her tears, "You are the kind of leader this nation prayed for, Ibrahim. May God bless you for what you have done today." Ibrahim simply bowed his head, humbly accepting her words. He then turned to leave the classroom, his guards waiting at the door, but the children burst into claps again, louder this time, their voices echoing. Long live the President. Long live our leader. As Ibrahim walked out, the sun outside shone brightly, as though nature itself blessed this moment of forgiveness and renewal. And so, my friends, this story teaches us an unforgettable lesson. No matter what others have done to you, never let anger control your heart. True greatness is found in forgiveness, compassion, and lifting others up. If you enjoyed this story and believe in the power of kindness, go and watch our other videos too, and I'm sure they will also make you cry. See you in our next video.